All right, Steven Rogers, you're the writer of I, Tonya. Take us back to the beginning. What about the story of Tonya Harding inspired you, spoke to you? What made you want to write about her?
Let's see. Well, sometimes, my mind just has a mind of its own. I had just written a Christmas movie, and I knew that I wanted to do something that was just the polar opposite of that. And my niece was over, and we happened to watch this great documentary on 30 for 30 that Annette Burstein did about Tonya Harding. And I thought, well, nothing doesn't say Christmas like Tonya Harding. And but there were things in that story that resonated with me about truth and the perception of truth and the things that we tell ourselves just to be able to live with ourselves. But also there were things in it about class that I thought were interesting and about the media. So I thought there was a lot there to work with. So I went onto the Tonya Harding website to see if the life rights were even available. And I called the number for her agent, and it was a Motel 6.
Wow.
Yeah. And I thought, okay, I'm in. I don't know where it's going to take me, but I'm going to go. And so I tracked down Tonya Harding, and I tracked down Jeff Gillooly, which is so surreal to me now because I've never interviewed anybody before, and no one was paying me. I was doing it on spec. But I convinced them to let me interview them. And then once I did, their stories were so wildly contradictory that I thought, well, that's my in. I'll just show everybody's point of view and then let the audience decide what they want to decide.
So that's where, I'm guessing that's where the structure, the sort of mockumentary interview structure of the movie came from?
Yeah. Because when I first was talking to Tonya, she was sort of trying to put her good face on, and that gave me the idea that, because everyone's trying to control the narrative, and they're all telling themselves what they need to now to be able to live with themselves, nothing is Tonya's fault when you talk to her. And Jeff says that he never hit her, that she had a manager who told her to say that. And Sean, the bodyguard, he went around telling anybody and everybody who would listen to him that he worked for overseas dictators and he had hired assassins at his fingertips. But my feeling was he was doing that because he was 400 pounds, he lived in his parents' basement, and he was lonesome, and he was telling himself what he needed to. And to me, that's very moving for people to do that, and to twist the truth, so they can come out okay, So that's what gave me that idea.
The film teaches us. Yeah, give me a second. I'm just going to get you for a second. The film reveals so many different things about Tonya Harding that we never would have known. I think we all know her simply from the incident, but you really delve into where she came from and all that kind of stuff. Can you talk about what was the most interesting thing you learned about Tonya Harding doing your research?
I didn't know very much. I knew what the media had fed everybody. To me, everyone was just reduced down to one thing, and Tonya was the villain, Nancy was the princess, and they were all just one thing. And it wasn't a very nuanced interpretation. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I don't know how to turn that off. I just hung up on them.
No worries. You were saying.
So I didn't know that much about Tonya or Jeff. And what I did know was pretty much they were just sort of stereotypes and one-dimensional. And when you delve into the story more, there isn't a hero, there isn't a villain, they're just human. And that's really what I wanted to bring out.
Mm-hmm. And the film straddles the line between dark comedy and drama. Can you talk about finding the right tone for the movie? Because you deal with some pretty serious things in a lot of instances, but there's a big comedic spin to a lot of it.
Yeah, it was very deliberate on my part. To me, the story itself was really funny and really tragic. And oh, stop calling! To me, the movie was really funny and really tragic, and really crazy, and true-ish, depending on whose point of view you believe. And I wanted the screenplay to reflect that. I didn't want it to be just one thing. My feeling was that the characters were reduced to one thing, and I wanted them to be much more. I felt like all the characters are.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have to call you back. Please stop calling. I have to call you back. Okay. That'll do it.
All right.
And that's my brother, I think.
Oh.
But my feeling with the characters themselves were all very rebellious and very wrong-headed, which is an interesting combination. So I wanted the screenplay to mirror that. I wanted to include all those things that they say you can't put that in a screenplay. You can't break the fourth wall. You can't, have split screen. You can't have narration. At one point, Allison Janney's character criticizes the screenplay.
I love that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if it were a studio movie, that would have been the first thing they cut. I knew that I had to do it with this tone. I knew I had to do it independently.
One of the other things that's so interesting about the movie is that it has a really specific sense of where Tonya Harding came from, up in Portland, Oregon. Did you do a lot of research into that area?
I did fly up there, and I did do that, but it is funny. I don't understand why I understood those voices as well as I did. My background is not that at all. My father produced regional theater for a living. I mean, never Broadway or big time. It was always regional theater. But that's pretty much the opposite of how Tonya and Jeff grew up. And Lavana, I don't know why I understood it, but I probably didn't do as much research as I should have. I was there, and I have a brother who lives in the Portland area, so I've been there. But
what was the toughest scene that you had to write?
It wasn't the tone. I think that surprises people because I understood it. I was writing it. For me, it was just the scenes that required exposition, to make that interesting. Because really, the hardest part for me for writing this movie was the juggling act. I had to juggle, the tone of it, being funny, being tragic, being crazy, being true, to show everybody's point of view, to tell their truth, but also to be entertaining. I didn't want to do a standard biopic. I wanted to look like something different and feel like something different. That to me was the hardest.
When Craig Gillespie came aboard, what was that collaboration like? Did it change much when he came into it?
No, it was miraculous. It was. He was everybody's first choice. Because I produced it with Brian Unclis and Tom Ackerley and Margot Robbie, and we were all united in how we saw the movie. And once Craig came on, I mean, he was another member of the team, and then he was the team leader. He talked about, the first time I ever talked to him, he was talking about the tone of it and the pace of it and how he would shoot it. And it was spot on. We had a lot of interesting director choices, but he was everybody's first choice. Sorry, everybody else.
Talk about Margot Robbie. She'd been involved with it for a long time. I mean, what do you think made her right to play Tonya Harding?
Well, first off, she chased it. She went after the part, which is always interesting. There was a time where the very first day that I met her, we were meeting, just to say hello and to talk about the movie and everything. And we were making small talk and stuff. And then I started to talk about the real Tonya Harding in my interviews with her. And suddenly there was this intensity behind her eyes. And I thought, well, that's really interesting, because when I was talking to Tonya about the triple and what that was like, there was the same intensity behind her eyes. And I thought, oh, that's another sign. That could be interesting. It was more interesting to watch Margot work on set because, we had not a lot of money, and we had, I think, something like 260 something scenes and 31 days. Now you can do the math. I can't. I don't use the math side of my brain. But
I can do it with a calculator.
Yeah, I sleep on that side, and I get 8 hours. But I mean, you know, she would modulate her voice and her physicality depending on what age she was, because she ages from 15 to 44. And there were times where she was, you know, 4 different ages, and she would just modulate ever so slightly. But she did it with seemingly no effort. I mean, obviously she was just prepared, you know, but it just seemed so effortless that it wasn't until I actually saw the movie I was just blown away by what she was doing.
You've written a fair number of screenplays, like Kate and Leopold, Stepmom, quite a few things. Talk a bit about your writing process. Has it changed much over the last couple of decades that you've been doing this?
It has. I think, if anything, I've gotten slower. You know, I think when you're trying to make it and you're trying to prove something and get somewhere, you work a lot harder. But I think if you've been there for a bit and you have, you know, you live at the beach with your dog, you know, I mean, I have the most walked dog in Santa Monica because I'll do anything not to have to work. What I do now, I mean, I can't call it discipline, but I sort of play this game with myself where I'll write 1 scene a day. So if it's a 5-page scene, it's a 5-page scene. If it's half a page, you know, then I have the rest of the day free. You know, but that works. It works, and it just makes me move forward.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think this film has struck such a chord with the people who have seen it?
I think that it surprises people, and I think if you can do that now, that's something. You know, I think a lot of people go in feeling one way about Tonya and Jeff and Sean and everybody else, and I think they leave being really surprised by what they saw, and it makes people sort of reevaluate that, not only the characters but themselves.
And when you hear people talking about awards buzz for Margot Robbie, Allison Janney, and yourself, among other things, I mean, what does that mean for you?
Well, I mean, it's pretty awesome. I love movies, and I love the history of movies, and I'm so interested in the people who came before me and the people who came before them and what they did, and just to think that I could be talked about in you know, and be a link in that chain, you know, is very, very moving and very exciting. I'm not gonna lie.
So what's next for you? I mean, have you got more sports scandal stories, or what are you working on now?
I'm telling you, I am offered every misunderstood mean girl from the 1990s. I Monica, I Lorena. I want to get out of the 90s. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll probably do something very different. A long time ago, I wrote a script called Flora Plum that Jodie Foster was going to direct, and everybody in the world has been attached to that movie. We almost made it 3 different times. It fell apart 3 different times. It takes place in a circus in the 1930s, and I was approached to turn it into a musical for the West End, which I thought was interesting because I've never seen a musical with like Cirque du Soleil acts in it. So I'm working on the book of that right now.
Well, Steven Rogers, thank you so much. Congratulations on the film. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me.
Of course. You're welcome. Have a good one.